Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater. And I'm so thrilled today to be joined by the fantastic Jane Levy, who's currently starring in NBC's Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist. And I wanted to start by talking a little bit about your collaboration with Austin Winsberg, who's the creator and showrunner, and how that's really continued to evolve going into the second season, because obviously now we're at the point of, Zoe's father having passed away, played by Peter Gallagher, and it's really a different stage of grief. She was already grieving him even before he was gone, but it's a very different dynamic in this season. And I was interested in what some of the conversations were that you and Austin had together about what that looks like and what that was going to look like in terms of how Zoey approaches it and how she's dealing with it emotionally in this season.
Yeah, good question. So for anybody watching or listening that doesn't know, the first season of this show follows Zoey, played by me, who has this magical ability where she can hear people's innermost thoughts through song and dance numbers. And she's also, at this time of her life, losing her father to a rare neurological condition called progressive supranuclear palsy, which our showrunner, Austin, his father had this disease and passed away from it a few years ago. And so throughout the process of shooting season one, I would often talk to Austin about his personal experience because that's where this whole show was born. And, a lot about living in grief and how to say goodbye, and especially the particulars as it relates to this disease. And then in season two, it's not much of a spoiler to say that we lose Mitch at the end of season one. That's what you're preparing for all season long. And season two is, the challenge is, where does this story go? Last year, at the root of this joyful song and dance story that we were telling, there was this very deep bond between father and daughter. And I think that that's what makes our show so special, is like the bonds in the show and how we're bonded to each other and how we yearn for one another's love and affection and attention and etc. So season two, first of all, when we were making season one, we had no idea that when we were making the story about grief, that it was going to come out in such a poignant time where everybody was in this mass moment of grieving. And then to continue, for Austin, he was writing season two during the pandemic. So when we first meet Zoey again in season two, this is 6 weeks after her dad has died, and she is living at her mom's house. She hasn't seen many people. So there's parallels to the pandemic in that story of her having to re-enter life after taking a break, basically, from it, and suffer from some deep heartbreak. And so moving forward, the show has developed into how does a family continue on or carry on, to use the music from episode one of season two, after we lose somebody. And I have had talks with Austin about the specificity of his experience. It's interesting, this year we're doing press while we're shooting. I'm on set right now, whereas last year when the show came out, we were done. So we're very much in the process still. And so it's really interesting to do these interviews, because often actually a great interviewer as yourself will ask a question and I'll be like, good point. Let's write that into the story. Austin. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you just mentioned the performance of Carry On, which we see at the beginning of this season. And it really felt very reminiscent of American Pie, which was kind of the tail end of season one, in the way that it was choreographed in a single shot, both of these performances, in their home, and really just like utilizing that space and capturing this family's grief that they're all trying to process. And so I wanted to ask you about the parallels that you found personally when filming those two sequences together, and even just how it really helped in terms of the choreography, not just with yourselves, but like with the camera work that's coming through, and how you built it out, being able to look at the intricate performance that you'd already done with American Pie.
It's interesting. I actually haven't really thought about the parallels between those two numbers until you say it right now. And you're right. I think that what makes both of those numbers moving is that it's about people being there for one another. I see American Pie as, it's Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist. We follow this young woman very intimately for 12 episodes last year. And at the culmination, it's like, the way I see it, and maybe it's just because I play Zoey, is that these are all these people that have gathered to be there for her and her family. But like, you know, it's the wake for her father, and these are all of Zoey's community, and this is like all of them together being there in support of this terrible tragedy. And that is similar to Carry On, where it's like a family together, being there for one another. And I think that action is actually what's so moving about our show, is to watch, you know, Zoey's power is always teaching her about empathy and what's going on with other people. And it's about how we can be there for one another.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about the choreography that you have within the season, because, you know, you're very frequently the observer to what's going on around you. And at the beginning of the show, it was a lot of kind of fear of what was happening, uncertainty of what was happening. And at this point, she's almost kind of attached to her powers. Like you were saying, she hasn't had them for a little bit at the beginning of this season, and then they start to come back. And so it's something that she almost seems to find comfort in a little bit more. And so I was interested in how you've taken that into your performance and the choreography that you work on with Mandy Moore, in finding a different tone and an approach to kind of moving amongst the choreography that the other cast are doing as an observer and as a listener.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I'm actually just coming from a 3-hour dance rehearsal right now. And there's so much discussion about how Zoey participates. And especially as time goes on, we have shot 97 musical numbers so far, which is really crazy. And, you know, a lot of the conversations this year, especially from me, have been like, I don't want to just stand there anymore. I don't think that it makes much sense. I need to start experimenting with this power more, or I need to start existing within these numbers in different ways. And so it's such a collaboration, this show, between Austin, the writer, me who plays Zoey, Mandy, our choreographer, our director, our cinematographer, our camera operator. All of us have to work, you know, the other performers in the scene, the musical artists that we're borrowing from, you know, their song. We all sort of work together to make these things happen. And that's it feels very magical at times. Feels very terrible when it doesn't work, but when it does work, which is most of the time, it feels very magical. And so, yeah, you know, at the beginning, like you said, Hello Dolly is like, right. It's like someone's hitting her across the face with their musical power again. She hasn't heard anything for 6 weeks. You know, the last time she heard a song was with her father. And well, I guess we're back to life with this musical ability that is a burden, but it's also a gift, but it's also confusing. I'm also just not ready for all of these people singing at me. So as time goes on this season, you will see Zoey's relationship to the numbers change. And I'm always blown away by the creativity of Austin and Mandy and my castmates, because I do think that we are still able to come up with new ways to have this woman have this experience.
Yeah. And one of the other parallels that I kind of was picking up on in this season as well was we have Zoey and Max starting to figure out what a relationship might potentially look like between them. And there's that really wonderful scene with the two of them where, you know, they're potentially spending the night together for the first time, and it switches between comedy, it switches between, you know, real emotional connection between the two of them in conversation and song. And it reminded me a lot of Zoey's Extraordinary Glitch in season 1, that whole episode where you had to switch between tones so fast and even within the same performance. So I was interested in the tools that you feel that you really got the chance to develop and enhance through working on that episode in season 1 that became really useful once you were playing around with those tones for a scene like that.
You know, I won't get into my process as an actor, because every time I do, I'm just like, I bore myself to sleep. I'm like, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear how their lollipop is made. Just suck it. No, but to answer your question, you know, I think that the most important thing is that Zoey takes everything seriously. If Zoey takes all of the people around her seriously, even when they're singing, you know, Hard Knock Life, or, you know, whether it's her father dying, like, as long as we see Zoey taking everything seriously, and I don't mean seriously like uncomically, because you can have comical responses, but as long as we believe that Zoey is actually experiencing these things, you can really get away with a lot on this show. So tonally, you know, I personally approach drama and comedy the same way, in that I just again, I'm like about to start talking about my process and I'm like, but I just try to live it as truthfully as possible.
Yeah. I always really love the dynamic between you and Mary Steenburgen on the show, and the mother-daughter dynamic. And, it's such a unique relationship between the two of them with everything that they're going through. And as women, they both seem to be people who very much carry other people's emotions ahead of their own, even to their own detriment at points. And so I was interested in how you and Mary kind of like work together and think about those character parallels, because obviously they've spent so much time together, particularly in this season, spending several months just grieving with each other.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're right. I think that Zoey does put other people's needs before hers a lot of the times because she thinks that's what she's supposed to do. And then she, takes on way too much and then falls flat on her face. And we're like, oh, Zoey. And yeah, I think you're right. She probably does get that from her mom. And this year in particular, it's been really lovely working with Mary because, Zoey's bond was with her father and she was less close with her mother. And now that she's lost her father, I think her relationship with her mother is deepening. And I mean, lucky me, what other actress would I want to work with than Mary Steenburgen? I hope for this year, I keep putting this out in the universe that Mary and I can do a song together.
The show's also done a really beautiful job at making Mitch, Peter Gallagher's character, still feel really present in a lot of the scenes, even though he's not there. And so I wanted to ask about how you and Austin and the rest of the cast have potentially had conversations to really think about how you keep this character alive and still feel his energy in these scenes, even though he's not physically present anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that Zoey's powers are very connected to her dad and what happened with her dad. I mean, we saw her struggle with whether this was a blessing or a curse, but ultimately it was the biggest blessing that she was able to communicate with her father again. And I also wonder, maybe one day we'll get into the mythology of why Zoey has this power. But to me, it has to do with being able to broaden your scope, especially when you're going through a tragedy, when your scope gets very, very small. And so, something that I actually woke up, I had a dream recently and I woke up and I kept hearing Peter's voice in the finale in my head saying, I'm always going to be there, Zoey. All you have to do is listen. And so for me, blah, 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 actors process. I mean, that's why I'm here, isn't it? To talk about it. But, but I think, maybe every time she hears a song, magical stuff is happening in front of her. Maybe she'll see her dad again. Maybe not. But I do think, it's really, this show has been so affecting for me that some things start to become so meta where we really do miss Peter. And I really do miss last season. And sometimes I wonder if that's me or if that's Zoey, and we keep Peter alive because Mitch meant everything to this Clarke family. And subsequently, Peter meant so much to us as the family of Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist. And you will see throughout the season, there are wonderful ways that we get to have Peter on the show. And whether it's we're talking about him, like you say, and his presence exists, or whether he's physically here, can't tell you. But yeah, I really like that about this season too, is keeping his presence alive, because that's what we do. When we lose someone in our life, they don't disappear forever. We miss them and they still exist in objects, that they gave us, or memories or songs. And that will continue throughout our series.
I also really love the way that you've described your relationship with directors as an actor in the past, where you've said that they're your strongest allies and they really help you find a lot of beats of your performance. And particularly going into the second season of a show where you've been living and breathing this character for so many episodes and for so long at this point, I was curious about the ways in which going into season 2, some of the show's directors have still really helped you to like uncover deeper layers or details about Zoey and how she responds to things that you may not have found as much without them.
Yeah. It's really cool to go back to a show. I haven't done a second season of a show since Suburgatory, which was, the second season was 2012. So 9 years ago. Every other show I've done has been either a limited series or it only lasted for 1 year. And when you come back for a second season, it's so nice to have these relationships that you've developed so deeply, like wardrobe and the crew, like everybody knows how we work. And in that way, the collaboration is much faster. You can get to things much quicker. Something that I'm really looking forward to this year is our cinematographer, Shasta Spawn, is directing an episode. And she is someone who I feel like I've worked so intimately for so long that she really knows my process. She knows how I am Zoey, and she's watched it from sort of this other place of lighting. And this is going to be this is her directorial debut, and I'm so excited about that because I just feel like she really knows me. And often it's hard to, how I feel is not always how it comes across. And so I feel she's such an ally and she's so smart. And Shasta, I'm so excited for you to direct. I also work with an acting coach. And so I'm constantly talking about this character, and she in particular does help me help open my eyes to things about Zoey that, are hard for me to see because I'm playing her so often.
Yeah. It also seems like overall that the whole process of playing this character on a show like this, where, like you were saying, you've done nearly 100 musical numbers, it's just a really, really intensive process where you have to also kind of compartmentalize between like going to rehearsals and coming on set and filming things. And then you're also in almost every single scene throughout the entire show, which in of itself, if that was just the one element that was a challenge, causes you to work in a different way. So what are the ways that, being in every single scene, but then having all these added elements that you need to be involved in cause you to work really differently and have to create a different type of process for yourself in order to kind of push through all of it in the best way?
I mean, I feel really like lucky for this show in so many ways. One, I love the show. I love this character. And I feel like it's the best way to learn about yourself as an instrument because I'm working all the time. And so I know how I operate when I'm tired. I know how I operate at this time of day. I know what I need to be up. Like, it's like I'm starting to get to know my instrument so well that I know what it takes. And it's like, it's basically like an acting intensive. When we're shooting, I'm Zoey more often than I am Jane. I'm here, I don't know, 12, 14 hours a day. And so it's just like the most amazing place to work on your craft. Because also the thing about television that I love so much is it's like you have the pilot episode and then you have the finale, and then in between your character's going like this. And maybe that's for 6 months and maybe that's for 6 years. And so you really get to explore your ability as an actor, all the places that this character could go. And when you're in this many scenes, another like hot tip is that like everything becomes less precious because you're like, well, I have 4 more scenes today, and that less precious feeling, I think, lends itself to more curiosity, bravery. Maybe bravery is not the word, but like willingness to try things that are new. It's being the lead of a series is great for an actor, I would say, because you can just work on your craft relentlessly, and I feel like my actor muscle is strengthening all the time.
Yeah. Do you feel like in terms of recording the songs, because you're often doing pre-record before you're on set performing them, that there's been a shift in the way that you've worked in that way as well? Because, in the first season, when you went in to tape the first songs, you hadn't actually embodied Zoey yet. Whereas at this point, you know how she responds to all the things. So has it changed the way that you're able to think about character work when you're doing the pre-recording?
Totally. The other thing is, like I've said in a million interviews, and probably everybody knows, I don't have a musical background. I'm not trained as a singer or dancer like many of my co-stars are. So when we started the show, I was nervous because I was like, I want to be really good at this thing. I don't want to fail. But now I've sort of realized first of all, I'm good enough. Obviously, the show's working, you're fine. Second of all, I'm an actor and I'm most concerned about telling the story. So for me, I care less about what I sound like and more about what story I'm telling and how well and specifically I'm telling that story. So yeah, when I get into the booth now, it sounds so cool. Like I just get into the booth because I'm like a person who records music. I am like, okay, where is Zoey? It's hard too because we haven't shot the scene, so you don't know how close you are with someone or how intimate it's going to be. And I just sort of allow myself to play and just try to, again, be as truthful as possible to the character and to the story that we're trying to tell.
Yeah. It also sounds like there's very often a shift from going into rehearsals from performances to once it's on set and you're actually in the physical space. What's the kind of evolution that tends to happen with any sort of performance piece between rehearsal and set?
Well, something that's been really interesting about this job in particular is learning choreography and acting to choreography, because it's sort of like ADR. If you don't know what that is, it's like dubbing. It's additional dialogue recording where like your line will be, I don't know who I'm explaining this to, who doesn't know, but some people don't. Like, say there was a noise over my line, I'd have to go re-record it, and I watch my lips move, and I have to completely imitate my performance. And it's so antithetical to the way that I normally like to perform. I am somebody who I don't like to plan what's going to happen. I like to have a real experience. I believe that when actors have experiences, the audience will. I think if you plan it, sometimes it's like the actor is telling the audience how to feel. It's like sort of like this beautiful face of an actor on television telling you the beats of their experience rather than actually having it. That's not my taste, Jane. I love to watch someone go through something because I feel like it's more impactful. So it's very hard to work that way when you have very particular choreography, but it's also such an amazing challenge. So in rehearsal with the dance, I really want to get it right. I want Mandy. I want to honor Mandy's work. I want to do what Austin asked, and I want to tell the story with these movements, but I also want to have that feeling like it's the first time this character is doing that. And I want it to feel authentic, and I want it to feel like it's coming out of the moment. So that process of getting it from the moves right in a dance stage to actually having like an experience as an actor who's very present takes a lot of like concentration. And I don't even know how to explain it, but that is a very delicate skill that I'm learning more and more about on this job that I've never had to do before. And I think it'll probably lend itself to all sorts of areas of my performing as an actor.
Yeah. I also feel like one of the things that you do so beautifully, consistently in your performance in all of these episodes is find the mix of grief that she's going through, what she's processing, but also just kind of like the everyday levity of life and even within singular moments. And so I wanted to ask a little bit about that. And if that's something where you're having, conversations with Austin, with the directors about the different tones that you want to find within those short moments, or if it's something that just kind of comes very naturally at this point with the character.
I think it's a combination of all of those things you just said, but something I've been thinking about a lot is that, we can watch somebody be sad. But in life, when somebody's sad, what do? They eat a lot, or they make bad jokes, or they, drink a lot. Like we all have reactions to being sad. So Zoe's sad, but we don't want to just see Zoe being sad because first of all, that's just not what people do. And that's not the way we understand sadness, I think, on a subconscious level. So for me, I have this wonderful writing that lets me be like a total goofball that slips on the banana peel and bonks her head and is so heartbroken and confused and anxious that she's just gonna like keep talking and make really stupid jokes and make a fool of herself all the time. And that line of like comedy, but it's coming from grief, is like the funnest thing to play. And it's also, to me, what makes Zoe human, and that makes us love Zoe.
Yeah. And, overall, in terms of just like looking at playing this character and the journey of coming back to her, what are some of the aspects of playing this character and the process of the TV show as a whole that you still found really challenging coming back to season 2?
I guess I wouldn't say this is maybe the most challenging, but the thing that I have to keep reminding myself, which is the thing that also brings so much to my personal life that like playing Zoe has sort of like informed me of, is that the whole point of the power is it's about heart. I think the point of the power is to really feel my own heart as Zoe by feeling other people's hearts. And, on the page, sometimes these scenes can feel maybe there's such an earnestness about our show that requires me, Jane, to really strip away my guards, and really just be vulnerable in moments where it's hard because I'm trying to get, the 8th scene right today. And I'm, just tired and overwhelmed. And just really want to get the job done. But that is all. And I think this is very parallel to Zoey, where she's like, I just want to be a good coder and I just want to get all the things right. But people keep singing to me. And I think that it's a really great reminder for myself as an actress and as a human being that we can try to get all the things done. So we get all the things done, but we have to remember that, underneath all of this, we're all humans with like aching hearts for things. And to play Zoey, I really have to allow myself to be open-hearted and vulnerable. And that is a challenge, but it's also a great gift.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we should let you run back to rehearsal so that we can get more episodes of the TV show to be able to watch. And thank you so much for talking with us about all of this.
Thank you so much.